Hey everyone, Britta Albert here. If this is your first time here, I am a transformational life coach, and it's my goal for this channel to help you overcome the obstacles that are standing in the way of you living your best and most authentic life. Today's video is part 3 of a series that I'm doing to explain the beginnings of my supernatural experiences. Whether you agree with it or not, or whether you're just curious, I hope that you sit back, relax, grab some snacks, and join me on part 3 of this adventure. I'm going to link the playlist up above. If you have not watched part 1 or 2, I highly recommend for you to go back and watch those in order to understand where we are going from here. It is not actually necessary for you to watch them in order for you to understand what's going on in this video. However, it will be very beneficial for you to understand the backstory of what led to this part of the story. And without further ado, let's get into it. So, after about a year of me cutting everything out of my life that I deemed as supernatural, I started to experience really negative things in my life. And this one I'm going to tell very carefully because there was my perception of it at the time, and there's my perception of it now, knowing what I know from more experiences that came years later that gave me clarity on what happened here. So I'm first going to explain it the way I experienced it. But in this particular one, I'm also going to come back and explain it for what it actually was. My marriage was not doing well at this point. We had 2 little ones. I think my son was about 4. My daughter was about 2, which put me about 23. I was not sleeping. I was crushed. I was devastated. I was not wanting to end my marriage, but it was over. And I was denying my truth. And whenever you deny your truth, it creates resistance and suffering. What happened next, I do believe, is a mixture of things that created this experience. There is the spiritual realm, there is the physical. And again, from my experience, they both go hand in hand all the time. There are spiritual explanations and there are physical 3D explanations. It's not that either one of them are wrong, but they make a bigger picture of understanding when you put them together. I wasn't sleeping. And it was about 3 days of not sleeping at this point. I was just crying. I was sick to my stomach. I was in agony, physically, mentally, emotionally. The way our house was set up is, again, this is rural, southern, small town. We are in a farming community. There's a big field where our house is, and then a tree line around the perimeter of the field. So I could see the tree line from my window at night, and I'm guessing it was a full moon. It was a clear night. We don't have any, or we didn't at the time, have any lights in the yard, but the whole yard was illuminated. I could see the yard and the tree line perfectly. I saw something that terrified me. I saw what I can only describe, the closest thing I can describe it to is a Hollywood zombie. Think of more Walking Dead type zombie, but intelligent. And it was not gruesome. They were gruesome, but there wasn't exposed organs or bone or torn flesh. And they were about 9 feet tall. And they walked this is more of why they reminded me of a zombie than anything else, is that they walked with that slow drag, So they would like drag the foot. I know you can't see me dragging my foot, but I did it anyway. So they're moving from side to side, dragging a leg, dragging an arm, a limb, looking, swaying. And one of them, its head, like its neck was broken, and its head, the top of its head was upside down. And so here's the chin, and here is the top of the head. And it's holding its head and its arm. So the head is still connected to the neck. It's just broken and upside down. And the other one was the one that was more dragging the legs. So there was two of them. And they are staying in the tree line, and they're swaying and kind of pacing, and they're looking at my house. And I could tell what their intent was. Their intent was destruction. I had 2 babies in the house, and my husband at the time was asleep right next to me. I was so afraid to make a sound because I could tell that they knew where everybody was in the house by hearing them breathe. So this is where I say that this experience is a multi-part experience. Did I really experience this in the 3D world? I did not. I experienced this in my mind. I do believe that I was hallucinating from having no sleep for 3 days straight. And I was creating this experience in my mind. It got so bad that I actually believed, I truly believed, that if I went to sleep, I would die. So here I am watching these beings through the window, knowing that they can't see me, but they knew where I was because they could hear me breathing. They knew where my children were because they could hear them breathing, and they were trying to figure out how to get into the house. I was terrified of falling asleep because I thought, again, I was gonna die. And I'm like literally holding my breath and exhaling very, very slowly, trying to be as quiet as possible. And I can barely breathe, y'all. I was having a mental breakdown. I don't know. It was bad. It was scary. And finally, I couldn't even bring myself to pray out loud because I was so terrified. I prayed to God in my mind silently and just begged God to save us. I don't know how, but I finally ended up falling asleep, probably passed out from just sheer exhaustion. I never experienced those entities again. So at the time, I believed I had experienced a demonic presence. I knew there was never any confusion. I knew I was hallucinating, but I believed that I was influenced by something evil. Now, I know now that we can create a lot. We are creative beings. If we come from the Creator by right, we also create. Disagree with that or not, simply look around. Somebody created this house that I'm in. Somebody created the clothes that I wear. Somebody created the car that I drive. We are creative beings. We create. So what we do, we create works of art. We create music. We create programs. And so much more. And I was creating this experience in my mind. It was very real to me. And I have learned, as far as on the supernatural side of things, there are entities that exist that have never walked in human form, meaning they're not ghosts of dead people. They've never existed in a human form. And honestly, they're not actually even self-aware. They are programs that we create, and we create them with intense forms of energy, whether it is positive or negative. When you encounter a positive one, you really don't know that you encounter it, because why would you be really aware of, and why would you even care if all of a sudden you are really super happy and excited and just blissfully feel love for humanity out of nowhere? You would have no idea that you came in contact with a positive entity of just massive creation. So you would never even question it. But when you come across one that is made up of negative emotion, oh boy, do we know it. And they make movies about it. So what was happening was my mind working through the emotional trauma that I had been going through, which was the end of my marriage, which was having to question reality that I had been putting off for a year, having to open traumas that I had buried and not wanting to. And if I did not move forward, my mind would have broken. I would have developed, I believe, of course I can't tell you for sure because I didn't go down that path, but I do believe that I would have probably developed something more akin to identity associative disorder, because that's where it felt like I was going. Kind of that split personality disorder where your psyche splits and you have different personalities in order to protect your psyche or your inner child. And I think that was a huge wake-up call, because about 3 days later, I sat down with my husband and we talked things through, and regardless of what happened in our marriage, almost everything was amicable. 3 days after all of that happened, I decided to leave him, and we split. And I moved back to Oregon with the kids for a full 2 years. Ended up coming back to South Carolina. In the time that I was in Oregon, I experienced multiple encounters with ghosts. Again, knowing what I know now, it's far deeper than that. So this gives you a good idea. It's not the full story, but this is the beginning that brings me to where I am now. So this has been a 3-part series. I will let you guys decide. Do you want to hear more? Do you want to know what happened in Oregon? Do you want to know what has happened since? In its own way, you guys will hear more of that, but I can put it together in more of a chronological story as well. So I'll let you guys decide. You tell me what you want to hear. I hope you've enjoyed this story. I hope you've enjoyed this 3-part series. And if you do, and if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. Also hit that bell notification so that you never miss out on a future video. Thank you guys for holding space for me. I thank you guys for being here with me, and I will see you next time.